And recently, just yesterday, Thursday, the White House press corps has been going after Karine Jean-Pierre about getting answers of who's going to pay for it. How does this not increase the deficit? How does this not increase inflation? All these questions, because look, they're just like all of us. They had student debt as well. They didn't get it paid off for them. So they're a little upset. So now what Joe Biden has done is put us all together, the media, the conservative Republicans, and some Democrats, and we ain't happy about it. So just yesterday, you didn't have Peter Doocy, but we had Jacqui Heinrich of Fox News, who goes in every now and then when Peter Doocy isn't there. And she pressed Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre during Thursday's briefing, asking why the pandemic only seemed to be an emergency when it suited President Joe Biden's agenda. Now, where are we going with this? If you recall, the Biden administration had argued, even in court, by the way, that the COVID emergency had passed when the goal was to lift Title 42, which we talked about at length here on the show. So again, the goal was to lift Title 42 restrictions and to allow illegal immigrants to flood across the U.S.-Mexico border. She then pointed out the Biden administration was relying on a loose interpretation of what they call the HEROES Act, and the ongoing COVID emergency was to justify his sweeping plan to cancel billions of dollars worth of federal student debt. So on one hand, he's using the COVID thing to lift restrictions. On the other hand, he's using COVID as well as the HEROES Act to try to push his agenda on everybody. So it seems a little strange and a little odd. Now, we're going to watch the clip here between the exchange between her and Karine Jean-Pierre. Do you think that she answers the question, or do you think she kind of dodges it? I think y'all know. Let's go ahead and watch it.
I want to ask about the legal basis for canceling student debt. The HEROES Act hinges on student debt cancellation being tied to the pandemic and that being a national emergency. But the administration argued in court that the pandemic is over at the southern border to lift Title 42. It's so over that the government's going to stop buying vaccines in the fall and shift to the private sector. So how is this a national emergency? How's COVID a national emergency when it comes to student debt?
So it's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Look, we use the HEROES Act because there are going to be some people, when we lift the pause, that's still going to suffer. They're still going to have a little bit of a hard time. And so that's one of the reasons that we made this decision. Because as we're lifting up the pause, yes, some folks having not to pay for 2 years has been helpful to them, and we're able to save, and are probably going to be able to pay those monthly payments. But there's going to be some folks who are going to have a hard time.
Because of the economy?
Because they're just in a different bracket, right? They've probably had a hard time before. We have to remember, this is a system. So he announced the pause, lifting up the pause. He announced the $10,000 and up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients who, as I said, many of them have a household nearly making $60,000, and half of the Pell Grant recipients are $30,000 a year household. And so the other piece of that is a reform, right? Reforming the system as well, so we can help nurses, so we can help construction workers, so we can help firefighters, and making sure that their payment are cut in half as well. Because these are some of our first respondents, right, who also suffered so much from the past 2 years. So he wanted to make sure he gave them a little bit of relief, understanding that some folks are just going to have a little bit of a harder time, even though we're coming out of a pandemic and the economy has been turned back on because of the work that this president has done.
She didn't answer the question. She just sat there and rambled, said a bunch of cockamamie things, never answered the question. Typical. And the press are catching on, because the press, what they're all starting to do is ask the same questions. That's why we don't cover every single press reporter that's within that room with her, because they all caught on to this of like, who's going to pay for it? Why is it okay to do it here with Title 42, but you're going to sit there and do it over here using the HEROES Act with COVID-19, but you said that COVID wasn't an issue anymore for Title 42, so we should lift it. But all of a sudden, COVID's an issue now with student loans, so why are you putting it in place and just utilizing it for a benefit? Let's continue.
That was another thing I was going to mention. I mean, the president often says that we're not in a recession because we've got, record job market, record low unemployment, businesses investing in America at record rates. So why are those appropriate conditions to forgive student debt.
Well, thank you for laying out all the work that the president has done. That is 1,000% correct. But we've also said that we know that some people are still suffering. You've heard us say that too.
Why does she keep saying people are suffering? I mean, we all know why, right? It's a PR statement of like, oh, well, people are suffering. It's going to pull at our heartstrings as Americans because we tend to want to help people that are suffering. And so if we can word it that way of Americans are suffering, then, hey, we should help out our neighbor. We should help out other Americans and give them the money. And that's what leftists are saying. That's what the progressive left are currently saying of, oh, well, Republicans and conservatives, as well as Democrats, always say that instead of sending Ukraine and everybody billions of dollars, we should be spending that money here locally on other Americans. The issue is that I don't owe another American to pay off the debt of which they incurred. And I paid off my debt. I worked 3 jobs to pay off my student loans. I didn't ask the government for a bailout. I didn't ask the government for anything. But no, it's just going to be this period of time that gets a bailout. Screw everybody else that was before. It's so baffling that she's going to sit there and dodge the question of which I think a lot of Americans deserve answers for, especially those that freaking voted for this guy, of why isn't those that are pre this package here or this plan getting their stuff paid for? You were okay with sending freaking COVID-19 checks out with their hotcakes. All of a sudden that's a problem. All of a sudden you don't want to do that anymore. Interesting how that all works out, huh?
Yes, the economy can be turned back on, and we've created, to what you've just laid out, nearly 10 million new jobs since the president took office. That matters. The economy is stronger than it's been in some time. And we have said that, you've heard the president say that, there's still some folks who need a little bit more help. And this is what the president is trying to do. Both can be true. It's not one or the other.
Well, the Washington Post editorial board says that
and then I'm going to go to the back because we're running out of time.
Doesn't help those people though. That it takes money from the broader tax base, mostly made up of workers who didn't go to college, to subsidize education debt of people with valuable degrees. Mm-hmm. So sort of rebutting what you had just said. But beyond that, there are critics who are saying that this is not about the pandemic. It's not about those conditions. That this is about getting people to vote ahead of the midterms, and that the real national emergency is Democrats in the midterm elections.
Well, I mean, I disagree with everything that you just laid out. I was just asked a question by some Democrats who are saying that they're not happy with this, right? Who are criticizing this. And we have said we're not going to make everybody happy. And so if you're not making everybody happy, you cannot say that, that what you just laid out is certainly cannot be the case either. Look, here's what I will say, and this is just what we have laid out about this program. This is historical, what we're doing. It has never been done before. When you look at the system is broken. And we're trying to reform it so that we can help people who really need it. The way that this president has done this, he's done it in a targeted way. So it helps. It doesn't give a penny to anybody making more than 120. Let me finish. More than 125,000.
You guys, just to put it in perspective, $125,000 is a lot of money. If you struggle, this is me being frank, and there might be Paul Bradshaw viewers that are in the 125th, at least in terms of monetary, right, money that you're getting your income, $125,000. If you struggle paying off your student loans with $125,000, go see a financial advisor because you're doing something wrong with your finances. $125,000 is an astronomical amount of money here in the United States in terms of what everybody else is making. I don't even make I don't make anywhere, not even the same ballpark as $125,000. I live in California. I was able to pay off over $60,000 of student loans by working multiple jobs, and covering my budget, making sure that I planned it out accordingly in a year and a half. AOC makes over $120,000. Rather than going and paying off her student loans, what'd she go decide to do? Buy a Tesla. So just because you pay off student loans does not mean you're going to fix the behavioral economic platform in terms of why people and how people are spending their money. I love this because they go on later from the administration and talk about, oh, well, this is going to open up other avenues for people to go and extend their education. So if they couldn't afford to pay off their loan and go to school in the first place, and like I said, pay off the loan as well, then they're going to go to grad school and take out more loans? How would you pay for the grad school if you couldn't even pay off your loan in the first place? Because if you're going to spend that money that you do have going to grad school without taking out a loan, that's bad behavior in terms of your spending, because that spending should be going back towards what you just previously borrowed before on an interest rate. So again, it all comes back to the financial behavior of the individual. So this whole thing of people struggling, all those things, you knew how much college was. If you didn't, it's not my fault that you freaking were ramboozled, shammed, or whatever you want to call it by those universities. You should have done the research of, hey, USC is going to cost me $60,000+ to go to. Gee, do I have the money? If I don't, then I'm going to sign it, not expecting somebody else to bail me out. Especially if you're going for like lesbian dance theory, underwater basket weaving, finger painting, and you're not getting the rate of return, or you were promised a job by the university and you're all shocked and going, oh my God, I don't have a job that's making 6 figures out of college and I just spent over $100,000 after 4 years. How am I going to pay for this? That's not my fault. Do I feel bad for you? Sure. But you should have made the necessary precautions to look at what school costs, how are you going to get that money back after college? But no. The Democrats just want to bail everybody out. The Democrats just want to give everybody money left and right. Wait till we get into how this is all going to come back later on in the future. Just wait. We got a lot of videos today for you, folks. A lot.
And if you look at the Pell Grant recipients, we're talking about people, again, and I've said this multiple times in this briefing room today, and we said it multiple times yesterday, $60,000 household. We're talking about $60,000 household. And cut in half, right? There are people we're talking about people, Pell Grant recipients that are at $30,000 households. I mean, that's the people that we are going to help. Again, nurses, construction workers. When you think about the reform, I mean, we've just gone back. You've made your point. I've made my point. I'm going to move on because we are actually running out of time.
I love how she talks about the nurses and the firefighters, the first responders, but she's not talking about how, again, the fact that there's freaking people out there that are doing finger painting, basket weaving, basically these nonsensical majors, diversity, equity, inclusion classes, like whatever it may be, that, you know, those people are getting their loans forgiven, but we're not going after the truckers. We're not going after, you know, the people that actually need their loans forgiven. If we're going to talk about it, you're just going to do a blanket thing, very similar to the COVID-19 checks. Not everybody needed to receive a COVID-19 check. Not everybody lost their jobs. Not everybody needed it. So rather than sitting there and actually doing it wisely, because, you know, according to Karine Jean-Pierre, this is all being done very smartly, according to them. You know, not everybody needs this. But they're just going to do a blanket thing, anything, you know, over under 125,000, that's fine. We'll throw you 10 G's. Oh, you got this? Oh, well, here's another 20,000. Oh, by the way, this is going to go on until 2031 in the hopes that it just gets refunded every freaking year after year. I mean, it's just crazy how this government just spends money. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.